Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we're talking about A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence.
Yes.
A Swedish kind of black comedy, slow cinema, tableau sort of thing by Roy Andersson. It's the third part in what he's called the trilogy, his living trilogy. The first was Songs from the Second Floor in 2000 and the second was You the Living in 2007. And this film came out in 2014, won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, and it was selected as a Swedish entry for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars, but it wasn't nominated.
Right.
You picked this.
Yes.
What was your interest? Do you know about Roy Andersson?
Well, I've obviously heard a lot about him. I do think I've seen one of his other films, but when reading the descriptions, actually, it didn't.
Nothing came to mind.
Nothing came to mind.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure now. I was very sure before, and I'm not sure now. And yet, I think I would have remembered better because actually, I really love this.
Right.
I laughed out loud. Yeah, quite a lot.
Numerous times. Yeah.
So the absurdist humor is one I share. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's black humor.
Well, I would, I think. Okay. Or at least a lot of it. Or at least, maybe not all the humour, but the overall tone, I think, has a real kind of existential darkness to it.
Ah, yes. But that's different than black humour.
It is, but I think a lot of that comes out of the humour as well.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, the film starts off with a guy uncorking a bottle of wine, having a heart attack and dying, and his wife's in the background.
Okay, you're right.
Cooking dinner, not noticing, singing. It has things like that, you know.
Yes, things like that one laughs at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I mean, you laughed your head off at the monkey.
Yes, I did.
There's a monkey with. Well, it's obviously an animatronic monkey, but for the purposes, it's a real monkey, and its head is open. There's tissue with a blood stain, and it's locked into this metal sort of vice that's just holding it in place. And its brain is being electrocuted, and it's screaming. And there are two scientists milling about, not paying any attention to it.
Well, it's not only that they're not paying attention; it's that one of them is talking to her husband or partner or whatever, and saying, "How are you, dear? Are you okay?" And meanwhile the monkey's going, "Ah!"
Yeah, exactly. You love that.
I did love that.
It's a film that's got a few things like that in it. Although that is a bit outre. I mean, for the film, a lot of it is, while absurdist, is less. That's kind of on the wilder side, the monkey bit.
Well, actually, I think a lot of the things are so inventive and imaginative and surreal. Really, I mean, I really love it. Yeah, I kind of.
We should maybe try and say what the film's about or how it works. So, I mean, I would put it down as in the same ballpark as Playtime, which we saw not long ago, but less kind of energetic. I mean, I said at the start, it's in the realm of slow cinema, and I think that's true.
It's true. I mean, the film is... I wouldn't say it's slow cinema, because it doesn't have long takes or something like that, but it's very gently paced.
Oh, I mean, it does have long takes. I mean, these things are played out at length, and it's all on a tripod, isn't it? So they are technically long takes. They're not like show-off long takes.
They're not like... Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're not like the opening of Boogie Nights sort of thing.
They're not Bellatar, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it doesn't matter whether it's slow cinema or not. It's very gently paced. There's a lot going on. It's kind of deadpan humor. Yeah. A lot of it I find quite theatrical. Yeah, that it's based on repetition. Yeah, it's almost like gags. Is it Wednesday? Is it Wednesday? Is it Wednesday?
Yeah.
Yes, it's Wednesday. Yes, it's Wednesday. Yeah. So,
Think about selling the toys comes up in repeated scenes.
Yeah.
And it's always the same spiel.
Yeah. So, but I think this is very gentle and it's very kind, I think. And it's very absurdist. It's very empathetic with people who in the culture I suppose would be classified as losers, as kind of the underdogs, kind of people who are poor, and
certainly the toy salesman.
The toy salesmen who live in a flop house.
Yeah.
And the film is kind of with them in a way. Yeah, kind of
Where it seeks to understand them.
It seeks to understand them. And actually everybody in it, it's almost like, they either work in pubs or bars, or they run a cheese shop or a bicycle shop. Yeah, it's kind of, people who are eking out a living, basically. And they're not, they're not handsome, they're not, they're older. It's almost like kind of, they are people who are contemplating existence for a reason. Yeah, and kind of, and part of that reason is, what is life about, and, kind of, has it been worth it? It's looking back on it rather than looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, for me, I didn't so much think it was like them contemplating existence, but the film contemplating them.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's one point where the one toy salesman is listening to a song on the radio, and he says it's this horrible song, but it's so beautiful, and he's kind of brought to tears by it. And that seems to be actually a moment where he is contemplating kind of what's inside and that sort of thing. And then because he starts talking about meeting his parents in heaven, and they were so nice, but I don't want to meet them again. And to me at least, it feels like this huge unspoken thing there about, I feel like I've disappointed my parents.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I imagined he was thinking.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got too.
Yeah.
So I think it is about characters also contemplating existence. I do see what you mean. It is also the film, kind of asking kind of questions of what is life about through them.
Well, the film's title is based on, or it's inspired by, a painting by Pieter Bruegel the Elder from 1565 called "The Hunters in the Snow," and it's this painting. You look at it, and it's this wintry scene, and literally hunters in the snow. But there is this kind of bare tree in it with just a pigeon on it, and you see it's kind of in silhouette, and you do get the feeling of why Roy Andersson was inspired by this, to sort of what was his pigeon thinking about what he's seeing.
Yeah.
And the film kind of feels like that pigeon. So the film begins with, before the title even comes up, begins with an old man in a natural history museum looking at a pigeon on a branch.
Yeah,
behind
a stuffed bird.
Taxidermied pigeon behind this case, or behind glass. It's in a case, and he's looking at it for quite a long time, and nothing kind of really comes of it. But for me, they kind of feel like in opposition, like he's looking at the pigeon, but the film is sort of telling you through the title the pigeon is looking back at him.
I don't know.
The film has a funny thing going on with animals, actually, throughout relationships with animals.
Yes.
So there's the thing with the monkey, which we've mentioned, which is this really cruel thing.
Yes.
Even though you laughed, you swine. But it's a very cruel thing to kind of put this monkey in this, essentially a torture device, in what appears to be the name of science.
Yes.
And then to be ignoring it while this, it's going through this pain that you've set up for it. There's the lovers on the beach and the dog sitting next to them. That's a much more kind of much more comfortable or much more happy scene. The dog, he's feeling her up, and they're together, and the dog just kind of comfortably sits down next to them, and that's very nice and kind of bucolic.
Horses.
Yeah, the horses that the sort of 1700s army,
Charles XII,
ride in on, sort of invading this modern day pub. That's actually where the film sort of began to lose my sympathy, I must say.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It was like a flight into surrealism, but with a kind of a drab, gentle tone. And actually, I love that because it uses the music. The segue into that scene is the music that ends Luis Buñuel's Viridiana. Yeah, it's when Paco Raval invites his cousin to have a threesome. and the film switches into this rock and roll song, and that's the rock and roll song that begins this kind of surreal sequence, where you're in a bar, and it's a modern bar with cars, you can see through the window, and then comes these horses, and you think, oh, it's like some kind of orange parade or something.
Yeah.
Right, and then, no, it turns out it is like Charles XII coming into the bar. Yes. Yeah. So I thought that was fabulous, and actually in that sequence you get a whole bunch of things. So women leave this bar, then by the end of it they're all widows, and it turns out Charles XII is gay, and he picks up the young barman and kind of brings him into war, into his tent, and he doesn't return. So he's obviously someone who's died. So there are all, in these little vignettes, there are all these questions of existence and what is life about, and and actually that has a very interesting rhyme with the bar sequence. So you're introduced to these two salesmen, but there's someone else drinking in the bar, and then it turns out that he's been drinking there for 60 years, and then you get a flashback to 60 years ago, and you have all the soldiers and the Navy people, and kind of that song where they get a free drink if they kiss the barmaid.
And of course they all do.
And
but that 1945, right? So
so it's another war.
Although they were neutral, weren't they, Swedish?
I don't know.
I think so.
Well,
I don't know.
Maybe, whether they are
I don't
or
know
not,
whether that makes a difference or not.
Yeah.
But.
And that scene also has this thing of what has this guy's life been about, right? He's been there to drink a shot every day for the last 60 years. He's now deaf. He can't hear people saying goodnight to him, though people still care to say goodnight to him. He is known to them, and presumably they have some affection for him, because the barmaid tells the other guy off for being rude. I kind of you get all of these little sideways glances into the lives of not even ordinary people who do seem to be on the margins of society. I mean, kind of so it begins with 3 deaths. There's a kind of an emptiness to the decor. It's very minimalist. People's houses are very clean. They don't have things. They don't have objects. They might have chairs.
I would say sparse. That's the word that came to mind for me.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a sparse design and wintry kind of. It has the feeling of like a leafless tree.
Yes. It's all drab browns or
greys or
greys,
light greens.
That kind of palette. It's very gentle, and at the same time, it has moments. So within this gentle, drab, distant kind of tone, with a humorous curlicue edge, you sometimes get moments of savagery.
Yes, well, this is kind of where I wanted to come on to with the animals thing, and I want to do it delicately, because I mentioned the thing with the monkey and the kind of abject cruelty that I think is kind of being meted out in that scene, and then that kind of led me to think about the abject cruelty that's meted out in one of the final scenes with the giant copper drum.
Yes.
So these.
I think you're meant to make a connection.
I do as well, but I wanted, like I said, I wanted to do it delicately, because to draw a link between the monkey and black people is
it's very racist.
Well, racist, yeah, and I don't think that's really what the film is doing exactly. I think it's more about our inhumanity.
Yes.
So because it's inhumane what's being done to the monkey, and it's inhumane what's done to these people, and this is the first time that people in the film aren't Swedish.
Yes.
So there's these British. They seem to be kind of turn of the century or up to the First World War. Yeah, very, very kind of height of British imperialism dress. Pith helmets and so on. And they have this giant copper drum outside that it's like nothing you've ever seen. It's a real sort of steampunk, I suppose, kind of sci-fi device. And they're beating these tribal Africans, essentially. That's how they're dressed,
Yes.
And leading them into this drum, and they lock the door and then light a fire underneath.
Yes.
And eventually this thing starts turning, and you can only imagine what's happening inside.
Yeah, they're being boiled alive or something.
Yeah, it seems to be, Yeah. And then what happens is the camera turns, or you cut to a reverse shot, and you see the reflection of this happening on these screen doors, and they open, and what's revealed is these very upper class British people. Well, they may not well be British, but it could be upper class from just about anywhere in the West. That's how they're dressed, top hats and gowns and such. And they come out and they take champagne and they observe it. And actually the film having lost my sympathy about 40 minutes in, and then really I wasn't with it for a long time. This is when I thought, oh, this is different. This is interesting. The film hadn't been political. or kind of overtly. It hadn't been political, and it hadn't really been a kind of satire up until this point. And I thought, this is bold.
Yes.
Without knowing exactly what to make of it. But I think there is something about our humanity. In fact, Roy Andersson himself has said, and I read this about the film, he said, in relation to the title, in relation to the painting of the pigeon, or painting of the hunters in the snow, that the film is kind of asking, what are we doing? That's what he said. And this, I think, fits in with that.
Well, it fits in with that, and it's also saying, well, what have we done? Yeah. Because, I think it is trying to make an explicit link. The cruelty to the monkey is, the same kind of cruelty to black people, and it's for the same reasons. Yeah, that they're not considered to be human, or that, we at one point didn't consider them to be humans, or, some of us still. So, I think the film has been quite explicit about that connection, I think. So, it's...
I think it's important that the cruelty is purposeless as well. Once this machine, this drum starts revolving, you get the impression that there's no useful work being done. This isn't like torturing people because they'll row a boat or something. This is for no purpose. As the same with the monkey, it's being, I suppose, experimented on. It's being electrocuted, but nothing's been observed or anything like that. It's purposeless torture.
Yes, though I think it's interesting because that is played for laughs. I think.
Well, you laughed.
I laughed. I think the film is trying to elicit laughs.
Right.
And then what follows it, the British Empire tribal thing, is really savage. Yeah. Because there's a scene where, a woman falls down. Yeah. So people fall down and, these British imperialists whip them. But then a woman with a baby on her back falls down, right? And they whip away. And of course, all the blows are landing on the baby, right? And kind of no thought or care or differentiation. So you do feel like the savagery of it, really. Anyway, I really love this movie. And it's very difficult to kind of put my finger on why. Yeah, except that I think it's almost a film that is worth a revisit, really. It's completely unique. We were talking at the beginning about, how it looks a little bit like Wes Anderson, right? But kind of, like working class Wes Anderson. Yeah, it has a kind of a look, right? But it's also completely different to Wes Anderson. It's kind of low energy. Yeah, it's got these rhythms. Yeah, that are kind of gentler. It does have like flights of absurdism. It's a lot sketchier, than Wes Anderson. So it's interesting that Wes Anderson comes to mind, but in many ways it's not like Wes Anderson. In many, many ways, it feels very unique. Actually, it's like a.
He came to mind initially for us both, I think. I was talking about the way it was shot, and Wes Anderson is pointing directly at a wall with no sense of vanishing points and depth in a frame, whereas what happens here is actually you're pointing at corners quite often, corners of rooms. So actually you get loads of depth. Sometimes you feel like there's a cartoony quality to what Wes Anderson is doing. He makes his frames feel quite flat. I think that to me at least is kind of a defining feeling that I get when I think about his films. But here, no, there are foregrounds and backgrounds to everything, and sometimes they play off each other very interestingly, or there's action happening in a background that's completely separate to what's happening in a foreground, but you're watching them both at once. That's why I referred to playtime at the start, because I think there is a real, although I think we can agree this is lower energy, I think there's a kinship in terms of how it's trying to observe life, or observe kind of oddnesses that crop out of interactions between people, and how it's trying to stage things in depth or in different parts of the frame at length, giving you the time to absorb a scene.
I see what you mean. I wouldn't make too much of that connection either. I think, to me this is really like a singular voice. It kind of, I don't think I've seen anything quite like this before. The combination of the drabness, the low energy, the sympathy, the moments of savagery. I think maybe also I'm a bit prejudiced because there is something about that Swedish accent, right? that, you know, it has that musicality, but
Sure,
kind
yeah.
of low scale, yeah, that it always goes down. And then these working or sub-working class people, you know, dying or, you know, not being able to sell their vampire teeth. And yeah, it is kind of, it feels unique in a way, yeah.
I do know what you mean. You know, it's a show. I can't think of, you know, by name. Well, I mean, I suppose I can. Like, I mean, I do think this has a similarity to Playtime. I think it has a similarity to the short film that I mentioned in the Playtime podcast that I recently showed you, the External World by David O'Reilly. You know, again, it's a series of vignettes set around a central place. A lot of them involving the same characters or the same locations that you revisit, and things kind of develop. So these mini storylines. Again, that had higher energy than this. I think that's a really defining aspect to this film. Is the lower energy and the lower tempo. But I mean, I do see kinships that it shares with other films.
Well,
more readily than
in
perhaps
terms
you
of
do.
the film that you mention, you know, this has a kind of a gentleness and a kindness, that is not the same as that short film you mentioned. I mean, I think kindness is also something you see in Wes Anderson's films, you know, but his films are so full of things. They're so energetic in so many ways, visually and so on. Yeah, whereas, you know, this is a kind of a monochrome film. A lot of its effects come from a kind of stillness, you know, and minimalism, you know. So, and I think, you know, this is a film with great depth, that I feel I've not thought through elements yet, right? But you feel that in its stance and in its minimalism, there are serious questions being dramatized, not just asked, because you really get a sense of how they're dramatized. Like so much of it seems theatrical, you know, the staging, the kind of the repetitions, the way dialogue is spoken, you know, moments of theater like Charles II coming out down his horse. Those are theatrical moments, that are kind of, you know, staged. So, and there's that tension between the drabness of, you know, how you're being shown it, and, you know, the theatricality of the concept of the thing.
Yeah, I mean, that tension, I think you're right, that's there. It didn't do anything for me. I mean, I think overall I would definitely say this film wasn't my cup of tea. I think there are interesting things about it, and I was really engaged with it for the first 40 minutes until the first Charles XII scene in the bar. Actually, the reason that I turned off at that scene was not that all of a sudden this flight of fancy showed up with someone from a previous century turning up. It started off with the toy guys again, because their spiel about the toys that we're selling, and we've got the teeth, and then we've got this, and then we've got the mask. You'd seen it a couple of times before this, and when they showed up in the bar, and they're saying we're lost and stuff, they weren't there to sell toys, but of course they're going to. And I was thinking, oh, don't do the spiel again. And so when they started doing that, I thought, no, I have lost my sympathy with this right now. And I stuck with the film, obviously, and I continued to give it my time, but it never won me back over.
Well, it never lost me. So, and I love that scene.
And I really enjoyed it up until then. I really enjoyed the stuff which I thought was a shame that stopped happening between the dance instructor and a student.
Oh, I love that.
She's all over at the start, and they go to dinner, and you just see that in the background, through the window. You just see their kind of their romantic dinner turns into a breakup.
Yes, I
thought
love
that was lovely. But that stops after then. And I thought, I wanted more of that.
Yes.
That was my favourites of the vignettes.
Yes. But I love the relationship between the two guys. You're so mean to me. Yes. Kind of. Yeah. There's something kind of so sad. Yeah. About it. We just want to make people have a good time, or we just want to bring joy to people. I forget what they said. And then they bring out those sad vampire teeth. They say it's a classic. You think, it's been there since like 1930. And there's no market for any of this. And the laugh machine, and then the masks of the toothless men right? Like it's so pathetic, really.
Yeah. And they keep saying we have high hopes for this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of there's something so sad and sweet because they don't know, right?
Well, I mean, do you not feel like maybe they do?
No,
They do know that these things are rubbish, really. And
no,
because I mean, would that not explain the fact that they have absolutely no energy in their spiel?
No, I mean, no. I think because you see that lack of energy in their whole life, but also you see a bond between the two men, and a kind of a care and a looking after in all the sadness. I thought it was very touching.
Between the two men, sure, but I think when it comes to selling the toys, I think I certainly got the feeling that they know they're onto a loser with this stuff.
Well, I don't know because they keep trying, and then they can't collect on the money owed. They can't pay the people they owe to, And you think, well, if they know, why are they doing it, right? I mean, I went with the idea
living against the signals.
I went with the idea that they don't know. I mean, they're not the brightest bulbs in.
I don't think you have to be to realise, the vampire teeth aren't the biggest seller these days.
Well,
I don't know.
I kind of.
It's up for interpretation, I think.
Yeah, and it's not the most crucial question to ask about that anyway. I don't think.
I suppose not.
So, anyway, I liked it very much, and I'm eager now to see the others.
Oh, are you?
Yes, you don't have to see them with me, but I'm just saying.
Oh, right, okay, we can see them for the podcast. You can report back. I'm really not that keen to see the others. This just didn't... This lost me and never got me back. And so the other thing I thought, which is unfair having only seen it the once, and, I think it is a film that probably would open up on repeated viewing or repeated attempts to dissect it, is, after we saw Playtime, I know I'm comparing it to it again, don't hate me, but it comes to mind, after we saw Playtime, I thought I can find a place for everything that happens in this film, a kind of holistic, there's a really holistic feel to what that film's aiming at, and the message that it's trying to convey. I feel that a lot less with this. That may just be a personal thing that I haven't dug into it in the right ways, or that kind of thing, or maybe I don't have the tools to access it. I mean, Charles II, who they continue to Charles XII, who they continue to refer to, and the war that he's fighting the Russians.
Yes.
They talk about
losing half the country.
The barman mentions, he says to everyone, "You're a widow, and your husband died in I forget
somewhere,
where, Moldava, something like that." This must be based on real history that I don't know. I can't imagine that it's totally fictional, right? Charles XII has to be a real king. This has to be referring to something. I'm just not... but I don't know it.
Yes.
So some of these references, some of the cultural and historical points of reference are not accessible to me at this point.
Yes. Perhaps. I mean, I feel I really... I love it. My sense of humor really coincides with it or jives with it. I think all the parts do cohere. I think I would like to explore it some more. I said, kind of, you really feel that it's a film that's asking you to think and to feel, and without forcing you into it, or without being obvious, or without symbolizing, and also, that it's a very empathetic but critical film. Like I said, sometimes, it's absurdist and surreal, and sometimes it's just really savage, all within like this gentle, everyday, quotidian kind of drabness. And I it really kind of spoke to me.
Did you find it moving then? How in tune were you with the characters or their plights?
Yeah, moving, no. I can't say that I found it moving. But I found it critical in ways that jive with me, right? Like, for example, one of the first deaths that we see is these siblings, going into the mother's deathbed, right?
Arguing over...
and then the
jewels
mother...
that she's clutching in her bag still.
Yeah, the mother's clutching her bag. And actually, all of these relationships come in that moment. The elderly sister tells her brother, "You've always been mean." You know, the other one is thinking, "Oh, well, the doctor says she's not going to die today. That she'll be another 24 hours, so we can go home. Oh, we can't go home and leave her bag with her money, right? Like she's got 70,000 in there, plus father's watch and her wedding ring. Like, kind of that touches a bell with me. I've seen that, like, and also there's this fantastic. I don't know if you've ever read Kazantzaki's. They made it into that film with Anthony Quinn, Zorbel.
Oh, right, Zorbel the Great.
Where like the film begins with somebody dying, and they hire all the neighborhood women come to cry, right? Like and so they're crying because that's part of the tradition. Someone is dying, you go and you weep and loud, but as they're crying, they're eyeing up the cupboards, right? Because the thing. So what do they take home after the person dies, right? So So all of those things spoke to me.
I mean, I think
in very condensed ways,
Yeah, well, that's certainly something that the film's got going for it. It's despite the fact that it's sort of long and takes its time to get through scenes, nonetheless there's a concision to everything that it's doing, and it's communicating several things through one character, or things that are there to be interpreted. I think that's true. I mean, I would say that I wasn't moved, but I really got the character of the more schlubby of the two toy salesmen, Jonathan, I think it was, who's the one who cries over the song. In fact, that bit, I mean, this is a real sort of 30-something white guy thing. I remember having the same feeling that he did that song to a Radiohead song. And Radiohead is so the kind of... Patrice O'Neill, who was this black American stand-up, had this fantastic bit about white guys listening to Radiohead, listening to Creep in particular. It's like, he said, I listened to this song and it did nothing for me.
I love it.
But white guys, like you play it on the radio and they'll crash into the harbour because they start weeping. Well, there was No Surprises for me, which is by Radiohead from a later album. And I remember listening to it about 15 times one night because I just, all of a sudden, every part of that song started speaking to me. Like, it's this guy who wants to kill himself and he's happy to, and he wishes death and this kind of numb death with dying from carbon dioxide. But the tone of the music has this like nursery rhyme thing going on. It's bizarre, and everything the guy was talking about in the film about the song he's listening to, it's beautiful, but it's horrible. I was thinking the same thing. I remember thinking the same thing when I was listening to No Surprises. So I thought, I get this guy right here, And the bit where he's sitting outside, he's kind of broken up with his partner at this point, and he sat outside of that kind of like coffee stand, I guess, and there are a couple of people sitting around, and he's just kind of, at this point, it's like he's kind of the pigeon that we were talking about, observing stuff. Like, he sees this girl go past and she takes her shoe off and bangs it against the wall and puts it back on and keeps on going, and he says to the other people there, oh, she had a stone in her shoe. And they said, so what? And he says, it's nice. You go, what's nice about having a stone in your shoe? He said, no, she got it out. I just thought, that is nice. and then he tries to sell them some toys, quite dejectedly, I guess, and they both just walk off, and he's left really on his own, so isolated, sitting there. And I thought, I do feel bad for you right now. And that was in the whole section of the film that I thought, so it still had its moments for me. Yeah, no,
I really loved it. I mean, and there were things that kind of stay with you. So you remember, so there's a little bit where a guy is looking out the window, and the one I told you looked like Frankenstein.
Having a cigarette.
Having a cigarette, you're just observing him, and then there's this, quite beautiful woman behind, and she just embraces him. And actually, I can't remember anything more about that scene, but
that's about it.
It felt lovely, right? Kind of, these are kind of ordinary people, finding a connection, and a moment of value and love, and in life. I love that.
And actually, that's somewhere where you think there's an opportunity for a joke here, and it could be just about anything. Yes. She could admonish him for having a cigarette or something like that. She just shares a cigarette with him and goes in, and that's it. And actually, in amongst this kind of bizarreness, there's this time for this human moment. Yeah. The bit with the mother and the baby, I think, is just like that.
Yes.
Where she's sat outside and the baby's in a pram and she's just playing with his feet and he's giggling away.
Yes.
And nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then it cuts away and something else happens. And,
yes. I thought that there were moments of beauty and tenderness and connection that we see. and that in some ways are played out even between the two salesmen. Yeah, when they're saying like the opposite. Yeah, he's always crying. But there's an understanding there and an acceptance, of character. So
and then he apologises to him,
yeah.
which is nice.
Yes,
and that is actually nice, and I like that.
So I love it, and I think it's a film that is worth exploring further.
Good. Well, report back.
Okay. On that note, we are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening. It's worth saying that both there are two Andersson films, including this one, currently playing on movies. So do have a look if our podcast has inspired some interest.
Yes.
Bye.
No, I agree. Take José's lead, not mine.
All right. Thank you very much for listening.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.